Hello and welcome to Make the Logo Bigger. My name is Brenton. This podcast is your gateway into the world of advertising production, crafted especially for those who are stepping in new, aiming to become producers, or simply eager to understand the inner workings of advertising and marketing. We're here to share insights and knowledge you've been looking for, with stories, tips, and real conversations from the pros. We're simplifying the process for everyone with a production curiosity. Whether you're just starting out or keen to explore the production side of ads, you've found the right place. Let's jump in. Today's guest is Karlene Van Opdorp, the head of post-production at Bastion agency, whose career spans both agency and client-side roles across New Zealand, the UK and Australia. Now, originally from New Zealand, Karlene started her journey in the world of brand and design before quickly transitioning into advertising, where she cut her teeth working on Kmart commercials and car campaigns for Mazda. Karlene has built her expertise across a wide spectrum of creative production, from live action shoots to post-production and animation. In this episode, Karlene opens up about the successes and failures she's experienced throughout her career and the significant lessons she's learned along the way. We'll discuss how important communication is to her process, the value of asking the right questions, and why she believes being curious is the key to success. Whether it's navigating challenges or collaborating with experts, Karlene's insights on resilience and leadership are valuable takeaways for anyone in the production world. Karlene Van Opdorp. Karlene Van Opdorp, or Karls, it's great to have you on. Thanks so much for taking the time out to chat all things production. Do you want to start out and just give us a bit of a background about yourself, how you started out, and your journey up to now in the industry?
Yeah, sure. Firstly, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I feel very excited to be here. There's a lot of great names already. You've recorded a few now. So, I hope I can live up to the rest of those. But a little bit of background about me. I am originally from New Zealand. I don't know if you can tell from my accent. I feel like some people can, some people can't. But I studied a Bachelor of Communications in Wellington at Mazda University. And when I finished there, I really didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to get into the industry. I didn't know any connection. So I asked my public relations professor, and I said, did she have any contacts? And she actually put me in touch with a brand and design studio called Designworks. And so I did a little stint there. I think I did 3 days as a copywriter. And I was terrible. Copywriting is not my strength. That's why I couldn't be a journalist. And I performed terribly. And at the end of the 3 days, they said to me, we really love you, but we don't think you're right for the copywriting role. But we see a lot of potential in you and we think you could do other things. So they graciously titled me with, I think it was project manager. I was definitely not a project manager. I was, like a runner. I sat at the reception desk, I answered phones. I did whatever, anything and everything. But yeah, after a year of that, I feel like it was a good taste of what brand and graphic design is. I got to sit in lots of high-level meetings and just soak it up with some of the best talents in that business. And then I did the old classic thing where I went to the UK for my 2-year visa. And I got a job in Soho at a company called, Start Judge Gill. And yeah, it was an absolute baptism by fire. I really had only a year under my belt and I had no idea what I was doing. And there wasn't a whole lot of mentorship. It's sort of like you learn on the job and you get your hands dirty. So I was an account service in that role. And so being client facing was challenging. When you're young, you don't really know what to say or do. And I was in a different country with kind of no contacts and completely new team around me. And you just learn on the fly. You just learn on the fly how to make things work. And I think I obviously had a knack at something because I realized the better you are, the more work you get served. And it was kind of like good and bad, I suppose. But yeah, I got served a couple of really fun jobs. They said, did I want to be seconded to Dubai to work on the Jumeirah account? And they were going to build a brand new hotel, not in Dubai, but somewhere else. And they needed a whole new brand design look and feel for this hotel, its identity, its logo, and every little thing within the hotel. needed to be designed from scratch. So yeah, I was like maybe 22. I don't even know how old I was. Very young. And yeah, off I went to Dubai with my colleagues, and we all lived in the same house, and we were, boys were separated from girls because you couldn't be in the same house under the rules then. And yeah, we just rock and rolled. It was kind of wild. Work long hours, had some fun party times in Dubai. After Dubai, I think my visa actually expired. So I decided to make the leap and come to Melbourne without ever being visiting Melbourne. I had heard great things. You know, a little bit like New Zealand, but better in some instances. So I thought, oh, that sounds good. So yeah, that led me to working at BWM, advertising agency, where I started in account service. And I soon realized in ad agencies, there are all these different departments and different roles, and it was kind of structured differently to the brand and design world. You know, there was producer roles and a whole production department, whereas in where I had come from, you know, the account service kind of was the producer. You were this kind of dual role. And so I was always a little bit keen on that department and what they're up to, because it looked like a lot of fun. So at some point I made the move and put my hand up, could I move across? And so I did. And then I did a lot of Kmart commercials. I produced a lot of those for maybe, I think, 1 year it was a phenomenal amount. It was maybe 13 Kmart commercials in a year. And it gave me a really good recipe and understanding of how to find good directors and how to manage the process from start to finish, how important it is to have the right products arrive from whatever country they're supposed to arrive, and that they should look and work as they should, and we're selling them, and what happens when you don't have a product that arrives as it, that's perhaps not working as it was intended. And what do you do when that was 3 scenes of your commercial that you're filming in 2 days? Lots of really great, interesting experiences. I did that. Yeah. So worked on many different clients and in lots of, different ways. We, at the time, did a little bit of in-house production. So I dabbled at that, where we would find our own crew and we would, essentially run the production in-house, which is also quite terrifying as an agency producer when you know very little about that production world. So I think I had a little taste of what that was like, and I had decided perhaps after 6.5 years at BWM, it was time to spread the wings and try something else. And I jumped to a lovely studio called Studio Pancho, a boutique studio in Collingwood in Melbourne. And there I thought I was going to learn lots of things about VFX and post, and really hone my craft in post-production, because that was where my passion was at that time. But little did I know I would be producing Mazda car commercials, which if anyone had worked with me at that time period, it was not my specialty. And it was a lot of baptism by fire, working with some amazing directors and really learning how tricky it is to work on high-end car commercial ads that require police and tracking vehicles and drones and permitting and many location scouts and searches and in the mountains, and what a BT50 does and what it doesn't do. And I'm not a car girly, so I think there was a lot of knowledge that I gained whilst on these productions. But I also did sharpen my teeth with some of the VFX in post, and learned how important it is to pre-plan things, get base plates, how important it is to properly quote and explain to the client, this is what you are going to get, and making sure everyone's on the same page, and that there is a visual agreement that is pretty much like a bound contract, that this is the end result we're aiming for, and this is what we will achieve with X, Y, and Z recipe for you once we, film all the assets and we pull it together in post. So that was my stint at Studio Pancho, and from there I went to I decided to foray into the world of animation, just because I was curious. I feel like I kept getting deeper and deeper into post, and I thought, what's another what's another medium that I'm really not that exposed to, but intrigues me. And animation, it's it's so nuanced, and it's so there's so many facets and different variations of animation that I really had no idea until I was in it. There's 2D animation, cell animation, and even within that, there's all of these different types of textures and looks and styles, and amazing animation directors who bring their whole own flavor and recipe to each production. So yeah, it was great. It was a bit of baptism by fire because you're working on quite at some time, at times high profile pieces of work. With that comes big budgets and lots of eyes and crunchy kind of timelines. But it was really fun, and the team were amazing, and I feel like I learned lots from the EP who I work with there. And yeah, and it's also about pitching. A lot of the times as an animation studio, it's a triple bid, and so you often know who you're up against, and that's sometimes good and bad because you know the kind of recipe and the types of things and directors they might be putting forward. But it also means that every time it's a 50, well, it's not even 50-50, is it? My math's wrong there. But every time, there is the probability that you won't get the job. So it was a learning to not win, to put your everything into pitches and concepts and treatments and decks when you didn't always land the work. But I'm trying to summarize my time there was, I dabbled across lots of different styles of animation content with different studios around the world. And I then had my first baby, and the time zone and working with different companies wasn't working for me. Not with a newborn. He wasn't a newborn by then. He was 7 months old by then. But if anyone has children like yourself, you know that they're not really on scheduled sleeping at that age. So I wasn't getting a lot of sleep, and taking calls at night was really tricky. So I made the bold and brave move to the land of sports bet, where I went client side for the first time ever. And yeah, I did some cool stuff in-house there as their post producer. And it gave me the stability that I needed personally within my family life, because they map out their whole year well in advance. It's so structured. It's so scheduled. It's so planned. They have to, I suppose it's like any of the retail clients where they're planning for Christmas months and months in advance, and they know all the seasonalities that bring the business, and therefore they have, briefs in place that are going to make sure the work is executed at certain times. So there was a whole piece of learning there that, it was quite incredible, because once you're in a business, you are so much closer to the problems and I suppose the pain points of the business. Like you literally, within meters, hearing other people talk about, the struggles within the marketing department. And I feel like because you're so close to the problem, there's sometimes the solutions are so much quicker because you're just in the same environment. There's no third party. It's I found that quite an interesting outtake. And yeah, I'm trying to think, after sports bet, I was there for 3 years. I dabbled in lots of things, and then I made the move back to agency side after probably, I think it was perhaps 7 years. I'm now head of post-production at Bastion, and I'm 5 months into that role, which is going really well.
Couple of things there. Let's talk about the crossover when you do start out as account management and then you move into producing. What was it like having to learn this whole new creative side and then the skills that come with that?
That is a brilliant question, and it was a little bit harder than I thought. So I think you see someone in a role and they do it so effortlessly that you think, oh, if I can just, if I just jump in and do that role, that maybe I could execute with the same grace. But really, it was about knowledge. I didn't have the foundational knowledge on the other side. I had the knowledge of this is what a brief is, and this is the process within the agency that you might get something from a piece of paper up onto the tally. But I didn't know any of the back end, like how to find collaborator friends or artists, or even what a good editor was or what a bad editor was, or how to brief an editor. All of the foundational pieces I had to learn from scratch. And I think it took me a good year to just bed down, the basics of being a producer. And I was terrified the whole time, because I think you kind of go from semi-knowing something then to foraying into another world where you're again relearning and having to stretch and to become comfortable, I suppose, in the uncomfortable and the unfamiliar. But my team was so nice. Like everyone, I had lovely producers around me who were so delightful and so kind, and took the time to teach me things and show me the way. And I think that having, great leadership is also the foundation of, what makes you great as well.
And out of the people that were teaching you, is there anything specific or anything particular that stands out? The way that they communicated, the way they went about things, the way they organised themselves. Was there anything that stood out to you that you took?
There was. I think I liken this to parenting, where there's a fine balance of being really hands-on, but not too hands-off. So I feel like they let me spread my wings and make mistakes, but not to the detriment, obviously, to the project. But they let me kind of figure things out, and then they were the safety net. So, they would give me the tools, like this is the people you need to call, and this is the structure, and double check, my schedule and my things. But I was the one who went to South Australia to film whatever I needed to film for that client, but they weren't on the shoot with me. They were perhaps on the phone to support me when things didn't quite go to plan, or, to help troubleshoot things. But I feel like they had a really nice balance of guiding without, I suppose, micromanaging. It was like, here's the structure, just go for it. And I suppose it's also my own personal way of approaching projects, is that I'm kind of an all-in person. So if you give me a task, I'll just jump in and figure it out, even if I'm fumbling around a little bit at the beginning.
And is there anyone that stood out to you that was absolutely excelled? If you cast your mind back, can you think of anyone in those early days at BWM? And is there anything about them in particular that you think made them exceptional, or what they did at producing?
Yeah. So one of my biggest role models was probably at BWM was Sonia McGlavity. She is such a lovely, beautiful human. I think her natural style is she's just very friendly, empathetic, and she gets creative. And I think she had such a good way of being friends with creatives on the job and having their best interests at heart and protecting their ideas and knowing how to shape their thinking and their knowledge so that you can kind of execute what they really want and protect that. Because sometimes along the journey, clients have a say, or things deviate sometimes from the plan. And it's a producer's role to really make sure that the shape of the creative is what it should be. And sometimes that's a trickier task than it might seem when, lots of people within the agency, there might be lots of different touch points and lots of people want to have a say, and you've got to just manage personalities and tricky sign-offs.
From what I understand, and I've been told, is that you're very good at communication, exceptional at communication. With your comms between clients and internally, what's the emphasis you put on comms? Is it something that you like to go over and above with?
Yes, it's like you're reading me very well. I am an over communicator, and sometimes that can annoy certain people. But I like to, I think communication is of utmost importance, and I find a lot of things can get lost in a sea of emails. And I used to, when I was very young, be terrified of picking up the phone and having conversations, and now it's my preferred method. I actually love to just jam it out with a client, with a supplier, whoever it is, and then, obviously follow up with an email. But I feel that sometimes what's written or even what's said feel like there can be different interpretations of that. And I have an inherent ability to, I'm not sure, read when people aren't quite picking up what we're putting down creatively. And there are subtle ways, and perhaps not so subtle ways, that I like to, just spell it out and ensure both parties are on the same page. And I feel like that mitigates a lot of risk. And by risk, I mean, a really unhappy client at the end of delivery day when they thought you were selling them something and then you've delivered something else, or even many, many, many steps before that. You're able to really articulate and help them see the light on a treatment, or whether it's just a style frame, one little image that's going to make up a whole series of much greater images for an animation, for example. But you've got to say this is the color palette, and this frame shows the style in which we will flourish and flesh out the rest of the 2-minute animation. And sometimes if a client hasn't been on that journey, it's really hard to visualize, like, this one thing, what does that mean across a 2-minute piece? Like, it's a big leap. So I feel, and it's not all on me. Gosh, it's me asking whoever's in the room and the calls the right questions and prompting people to to outline certain things. It's definitely a trait and a style of mine.
And in this day and age, particularly when text and email is so easy, picking up a phone can just cut through any ambiguity or anything that might seem off, or it gets right to the heart. I think most people need to hear that, and probably young people need to hear that as well, that are coming through. Don't be afraid to pick up the phone. Don't be afraid and have a chat.
And gosh, the amount of times where I've interpreted that someone was grumpy with me, or they're getting frustrated, and they pick up the phone and it's not that at all. It's that they've, ferociously writing 100 emails to various, other people, and that it's just read, it can read abrupt. And you mitigate that completely by jumping on the phone. And
how do you get the courage? Do you have anything that you do? Do you actually talk to yourself? Do you coach yourself through it? Or do you just bite the bottom lip and go for it?
You know what? In the early days, I would write bullet points because I was so terrified of having a call. And it was usually when I was, I'm 22 and I have to call, I don't know, a much more senior, creative, or someone to say they can't have what they want. And you don't want to be in the firing line, or I didn't want them to dislike me. And I would write little bullet points, like a little rationale, or, just help safeguard, if it's not me, it's the client, or whatever it might be. And that helped, because then you have a blueprint. You're like, okay, these are the 3 things I'm going to say. And I suppose over time, I've just, it's all in your head.
Let's talk about campaigns. Have you got any memorable campaigns over the journey, or experiences that you've had that were really, really enjoyable? Are there any that come to mind?
Gosh, I think, I'm going to go back to my time at Studio Paint Show producing car ads. And I think not that they were the most standout adverts, but just what I had to learn on the job comes to mind. So there was one of the campaigns, we had to find these parkour guys who, if anyone has to ever hire some parkour guys, they're very hard to get insurance for, I must say. And it was just a combination of these guys jumping over, I want to say street furniture, but it's not really. It's just like, concrete around Melbourne, and lots of cars doing cool stuff in various locations. But that comes to mind because, gosh, we just had to find so many different locations for the parkour guys that was safe. There was safety reports, there was stunts and tests, and and then I think in shooting any kind of live action component that has vehicles is layered in with that and just makes it memorable. And the client at the time was Mazda, and they never shot one car. We always, for whatever reason, we would shoot like a fleet, and I think the most we ever did was 7. And it's two massive max action vehicles with all of these cars. And there's just so many things, so many little things that I think I learned that's probably seared into my brain. That is why that comes up, that tinted windows, the number plates have to be specific number plates. You have to make sure that you have the right model. All of these little things have to obviously be perfect before you have any of them on the road. And then, you have precision drivers doing all of these amazing, I want to say stunt performances. Like they all, if you've got, a V or you've got a choreographed car move with a tracking vehicle, the whole thing is like art. And I think until you are in it and you're trying to piece it together and work with some of these incredible talents, you don't really appreciate, like, you just see the finished product and you're like, great, that's a bunch of guys jumping over concrete and, like that's a beautiful car formation somewhere. But yeah, there's so much work and craft and expertise that go in it. And that for whatever reason, that one came to mind.
Is there anything that has stumped you that you weren't like, oh, I need to really learn something new really fast?
Yeah, there is. I remember I was working on some animation for a government client, and they are obviously lots of rules and regulations, and there's like a panel of them that everything goes through in this particular project. And I remember we had this beautiful New Zealand director, and the project wasn't where it should be, and I got brought on board, and it's like I got served up a bit of a soupy project. We were 3 weeks behind schedule. I am not an animation expert at this point, but I came on, had this beautiful New Zealand director. We're supposed to be having animated scenes and things, and so we start to get the project in a really good place and space, and we're making good momentum. And there is about 40 animators on this job. Like, it is massive, and it's a recycling campaign. So everything is very factual, and everything that you're putting into these recycling bins of visually what we're showing had to be perfect. You have to actually be able to recycle it. So I suppose where I'm going with this is not about the recycling and the visual, the design, but it was the color. So we had gone with an artistic color palette, and we'd made up the 3-week lag, and things we were going peachy pie. And what happened is the client, someone in senior management, government side, decided that, the grass should be green, as grass is always green, and the sky should be blue, but that our sky was not. Our sky was not blue and our grass was not green. But it was, basically they said, you have to change it. We absolutely have to change it. And I think in my panic, I let the team know, and I should have withheld this information. I let the team know, hey guys, really sorry, we're going to have to pivot. We're going to have to change this. Because of the deadline, I think you should start working on it now. And then I, meanwhile, presented the costs back to the agency who presented it to client, and they're like, oh no, we won't be changing any of those colors. Those are good colors. And I think what I had unknowingly done is I had really disheartened the team. And if I had kept that information to myself and, just let them keep going, I basically pivoted too early. And that was a big life lesson to me, is that until there is a formal cost approval that you are changing route, you continue on the same path that you were originally costed. And even if that means you're going too far down the path when you shouldn't be, like, until it's a change of route, that's when you change. So that was a big lesson. It wasn't a financial cost to the business. It was more, I upset some of the creatives, and they didn't need to be upset, because we ended up pivoting, within 48 hours or something, right back to where they were. But essentially they could have been none the wiser if I had sort of kept that to myself. But it's one of these things you learn on the job, and I feel like for all of my mistakes, they're probably greater life lessons. Like, and then once you've done that once, you probably never do that again, or the bar is set. Your threshold for problems just kind of grows, doesn't it? When you're junior, that used to be a massive problem, and now you're like, that's a teeny weeny little drop in the ocean.
Carls, do you actually have a process where you look at risks before you take on a job? Do you actually sit down and plan ahead and try and foresee any issues that may arise?
Yeah, definitely. I think, do you know what? I think I really honed this at, funnily enough, at Passion Pictures. You would think, oh, animation, that's not that high risk, but it can get really expensive. And the way we did it there is you really broke down each scene and each little element. And I feel like that was a great blueprint for shaping how you can apply that kind of formula to any job, really. It's like breaking down the number of scenes, breaking down the number of talent, breaking down the all the little components that make up the whole sum. And I think they had such a rigorous process there because often you are the conduit between other studios and a client, and you might be on different time zones. And the costing of the job as the company who was the intermediary, it had to be spot on. Like it had to, your interpretation of the whole brief and to manage all parties had to be perfect. And I think that costing part and that real breakdown of assets was really valuable, and it was a great process because I don't know that everyone does that or to that degree. And yeah, it was like we literally had a spreadsheet, and we would go to the most minute details of what was in each scene and like how long would that, like, do the math. How long, how many scenes, how long would that take? How many artists, how many specialists? And, it sounds really simple. Like, of course we all quote a job, and you've got to quote a job, you have to break it down. But I'd never done it to that nuanced kind of degree. And with that lens, I suppose when you're looking at things with a microscope, you really are kind of looking at it in a 360, way, whereby you are looking at things that, well, what if this changes, or what if they don't mean this, or what if they mean that? And so there is a bit of flex in the pricing because of these other variables. So we would often, because sometimes briefs are a little bit loose, and creative, as we know, can be interpreted in so many different ways. So we would do lots of ranges. And this is what you could get for this range. And if this, and there was lots of, again, communication and explanation around the price difference. And it didn't always mean like you get a more premium or polished piece. It meant, this is what we could be delivering for these scenes or styles.
What's it like working at a brand such as Sportsbet compared to, say, working at an agency? Is there notable differences? And if there is, what are they?
I suppose when I worked in-house, you are part of an ecosystem, your own ecosystem. I know that in an agency, you're also part of an ecosystem, but you are bolted on to many different clients. Whereas Sportsbet, I found you are in a team that are part of many teams, and you learn to service, how do I put it, different teams within the business's demands. So you kind of are a client with it. You have clients within the same umbrella, if that makes sense. So I might need to serve the social or the digital team, digital or social assets as being part of the post-production department. Or I might need to service the partnerships team, certain materials to help facilitate with all of their racing or AFL, NRL partnership content. Or you're servicing the podcast and the studio needs. You might be making graphics that sit on shows or are part of like intro packages for like footy kind of related programs. And it's just like you never get away from servicing clients. I don't mean that in a bad sense. It's just there is always a client somewhere, and it was just the proximity, obviously physical, but like by proximity, I mean the speed of which you get things served up because you're in the same building. It's just it's very quick. So, I'm trying to give you an example. It's not very tangible, but say a horse dies. You literally hear from, the marketing department immediately that the horse has died, and that you'll get a debrief that the horse is featured in X, Y, and Z content. And as part of that post-production team, you will need to then divvy up who's going to figure out, okay, that horse is in those commercials, that horse is in that content over there. And then my role within the post department was to allocate the jobs and manage the jobs with the various team members.
You did mention earlier that they do plan, so well in advance, so you kind of know what's coming up. But still, it seems to be, if you tune into the media space, you just see that Sportsbet are just very prolific with so much content. What's it like internally?
I feel like there was still really nice work-life balance there. It's non-stop. It really is non-stop, because you wouldn't think you would be so busy because it's just one client, but you're servicing so many different needs of the business. And Sportsbet really, at the end of the day, is a tech company, is serving you lots and lots of different products through their app. And with that comes communication, and there's just so much, there are so many different mediums driving you back to the app, TV, radio, podcasts. I feel like you're constantly on the content creation treadmill, but not in a bad sense, just to keeping up with the trends, keeping up. They're very timely, they're very reactive. They all the different departments work really hard to kind of stay in tune with what's going on and react quickly to the market.
What qualities do you think make a great producer?
I think you have to be somewhat resilient. Resilient to, you have to be perhaps open to being bold and brave sometimes when, you need to reshape where the project's going, perhaps. So, that might be having a conversation with a creative to say, we don't have budget to do that, but without saying no. So there's that. And then I think communications, I think being detailed oriented, I think having the ability to be micro and macro, which is a skill that takes time to build. You have to be able to be in the job, but also outside of the job, and kind of look in the peripheral and be like, what is coming up that I might need to be planning for, or that could be a bumpy road ahead, and how might I be able to mitigate that? Understand the creative. And I feel like early on in my career, I really didn't get some of the creative ideas. And to truly be a good producer, you need to read the script, interpret it, feel it. And once you're in tune with the creative concept, you really know how to produce it and get what you need to do to bring it to life. And you know the right questions to ask, and you also know when it's not looking, maybe not always. I don't always know when it's not looking as it should, because I feel like that's the creative or the art director's vision. But you need to know enough that when something's being served up and it's not quite at the level it should be, you need to know how to feel that and sense that. And perhaps, that's not something you have to have at the beginning. It's something that you can grow into and develop and hone and craft. But I think that's important. And also just being a good human. I think to be a good producer, people have to like you. If you're horrible, no one wants to give you their ideas or for you to work on their projects. And I think there has to be some sort of, you have to have empathy. When you're dealing with suppliers, I feel like I'm really nice to suppliers because I have been a supplier. And, you are one of many clients, and I know everyone likes to think that they're the most important client in the world. But I feel like when you're really nice to suppliers and you are truly in a pickle, they will move mountains for you. I feel like when I've truly, I might have screwed up or I've missed something, and I call them with my tail between my legs, and I'm really honest, because that's just how I operate. They're just so amazing, and they really come to the party, and then you build this beautiful relationship with them because they catch you when you perhaps need it to be caught.
Something to be said about being vulnerable. I know it gets spoken about a bit in this day and age, but I think it really does play a part, particularly with your work, if you can be vulnerable about things you might get wrong and say, hey, look, I have made a mistake. I think people are certainly much more understanding and much more reasonable, because we all make mistakes, and it's a part of it. It really is. Just a part of life and a part of the job. What advice would you give then to a post producer? What advice would you give them to have a great career and have fun as well.
I think my honest and truthful advice would be it's okay not to know, because I still don't know so many things, and I'm not a VFX specialist, and I don't pretend to be, and I'm not super tech savvy. And I really own my weaknesses, and I lean on the team and the people, and I ask the right questions to get the right answers. So I think my advice would be it's okay not to know, and just have an innate sense of curiosity and a desire to learn, because without that, you really need to. You're gonna be learning for forever. Like, I'm still learning every day. There's something new. There's always new tech. There's new people. There's new ways of doing things. I feel like, yeah, just giving you permission to not to know everything, and to have the courage to ask the questions, be curious, stay eager, and yeah, just rock and roll.
On that note, Karlene Van Opdorp, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Thank you for being open. Thank you for being so giving in your answers, your responses. I know that there are certainly so many people that will take value from it and certainly use it in their everyday, in their career and in their everyday life. So really appreciate you taking the time and joining us.
Thank you so much, Brendan. It's been an absolute pleasure to be on here, and I really hope that some people out there get some value and can feel better about their mistakes and the learning that they're going to, forge ahead with.
I'm sure they will. Again, thank you so much. Well, that's it for today. I'll make the logo bigger. Thanks for hanging out with us. We've shared some insights and stories that I hope you found useful. Whether you're just getting started or diving deeper into ad production, there's always more to explore. Keep listening, stay curious, and we'll be back soon with some more from the world of production. Take care until then.